Psychology in my YouTube channel, and today we will be discussing about procrastination, what are reasons of procrastinating, and what challenges a person might have, and how you can overcome these challenges using different approaches and neuroscience. Today, we are living in an era and being constantly exposed to screens, to social media, which are changing the way we use our brains and our ability to concentrate and to stay focused for a long time. And this considerably impacts capacity to focus negatively. However, the good news is that our brains are constantly changing, evolving, and it's always possible to change brain chemistry and span of focusing and emotional regulation. And therefore, nowadays, if you have tried many strategies, if you try to set timers for yourself, to use different strategies to stay disciplined, but if you are still experiencing difficulties, it might be related with emotional regulation. Sometimes when people are feeling bored, excited, anxious or scared, they might be avoiding certain tasks, or if the tasks are too large, it might your brain might invite you to procrastinate. And because something has changed, the era has changed, circumstances has changed, procrastination used to mean doing something else instead. For instance, in the past, maybe you were cleaning the kitchen, reorganizing files, and this was leading to productive avoidance that at least produced a tidy house. But today, alternatives to difficult tasks are infinite, and today we are choosing to scroll, to use social media, or to spend time in social media. And if you have found that your ability to start difficult things has deteriorated over the past several years, I want you to know that this isn't primarily failure of character. It can be related with emotional regulation and competitive landscape. For your attention has changed enormously, and almost nobody has adjusted their strategy. And today we will be discussing about ways of adjusting it. Timothy Pitchell at Calton and Fouché series at Sheffield have produced the definitive reframing, and that is worth stating clearly because most procrastination advice still ignores it, or they are not discussing about it a lot. Procrastination is an emotional regulation strategy and not a time management failure. And we don't delay because we cannot organize our schedules. We may be procrastinating because the task generates negative effects such as anxiety, boredom, self-doubt, overwhelm, and avoidance that provides immediate relief from that feeling. And this relief might be genuine and immediate, and the cost can be delayed. And this is precisely the structure that reinforcement learning predicts will produce persistent behavior. Therefore, every productive system eventually fails for chronic procrastinators. For instance, a better calendar doesn't address an emotional avoidance problem. You cannot schedule your way out of not wanting to feel something. And therefore, like noticing your feelings just before procrastinating, or noticing that patterns that show up often is the first step towards change and towards being disciplined. Now consider what happens to that mechanism when the escape option becomes dramatically more effective. For instance, streaming platforms are optimized specifically to remove every point at which a person might stop. For instance, autoplay eliminates the decision to continue. Recommendation algorithms surface content calibrated to your specific engagement. And cliff changer structures exploit the Zeigarnik effect, the same cognitive tension around incompetitiveness that makes unfinished tasks nag at you, deliberately weaponized to keep you watching. And the result is an escape option that requires no decision, provides immediate and reliable effect relief, and has no natural stopping point. Against that, the difficult task, which offers discomfort now and reward much later, is competing on genuinely unfavorable terms. Anna Lembeck's work at Stanford explains why this compounds over time rather than staying stable. Every high stimulation reward produces a dopamine surge, followed by a compensatory dip. And with repeated exposure, the brain adapts by down-regulating Every high stimulation reward produces a dopamine surge followed by a compensatory dip. And with repeated exposure, the brain adapts by down-regulating receptors requiring more stimulation to reach the same subjective reward. And the baseline shifts. Consequence for work is direct. Activities that don't produce a rapid variable reward, sustained writing, deep breathing, careful thinking, learning something difficult, begin to feel not merely unrewarding but actively aversive. And not because they become boring, because the comparison point moved them. This is why people describe a genuine deterioration in their capacity for sustained focus over recent years. And they are not imagining it, they are not weak. Their reward baseline has been shifted by an environment designed to shift it. So in that sense, our environment, social media, these platforms and screens are considerably impairing our ability to focus and to regulate emotions, and that's why it's one of the reasons why we procrastinate. And before we get to solutions, it's worth being precise about what you are avoiding, because the intervention differs depending on the answer. Maybe you are anxious about the outcome. Starting means risking a result that might not be good enough, and not starting preserves the imagined perfect version, and this is perfectionism procrastination link. Or overwhelmed from undefined scope. Maybe the task is too large or too vague for the brain to identify a starting point, so it registers as threat rather than action. So what you can do in this case is to create a more detailed plan on what can be done, breaking it into smaller parts. Or maybe the work doesn't engage you, and in a high stimulation environment, low stimulation work is comparatively aversive. Or maybe you are adapting yourself and fearing exposure, starting task whether you can do, not starting preserve ambiguity about your capability. Maybe you are afraid about the outcome, that this might cause threat to your identity. Therefore, what you can do is name the emotion first, because procrastination is emotional regulation. The first move is identifying which emotion is there. And there is a direct neurological benefit to the naming it, because if you are able to name it, labeling emotional states reduces amygdala activation and increases prefrontal regulatory activity. And putting feelings into words is not merely descriptive, it changes the neural response. So which of the 5 is it? Is it anxiety about outcome for reducing the stakes of the first attempt? Is it a feeling of overwhelm that is calling for divining a smaller next physical action? Is it boredom that calls for environmental or formal change? Or is it self-doubt that calls for self-compassion and a deliberately low-stake start? So given what the streaming environment is engineered to do, expecting willpower to win is not a reasonable strategy. If we will think about willpower and if we rely just on our motivation, it's most probably we will fail. Therefore, designing appropriate response to design and removing autoplay in your platform settings, the single change that is reintroduced, a decision point that design deliberately removed, and logging out of streaming services so that re-entry requires credentials, keeping the phone in another room during the work. And according to Ward's research, this is showed even a silent visible phone consumes working memory. Using browser blocking the redefined focus window. And the friction research also consistently shows that small increases in effort produce disproportionate reductions in behavior. So you are not trying to make it impossible, you are trying to reinsert the moment of choice that the design has removed. So in a sense, adjusting your environment and making procrastination less likely is one of strategies you can try apart from naming emotions. Do you have any questions? Are you following well? The Zeigarnik effect is the same mechanism streaming that exploits with cliff changers can be used in your favor. Once a task is genuinely started, it occupies cognitive space and generates pull toward completion. And the barrier is almost entirely an initiation. So intervention is to make initiation trivially small, opening the document, writing one sentence, putting on running shoes, reading one paragraph. 5-minute commitment works on this principle, committing to 5 minutes with explicit permission to stop afterwards. And most people continue well beyond, not through willpower, but because the initiation barrier was the wall problem, and it has now been crossed. And if you genuinely stop at 5 minutes, that is still a successful outcome. You have a practice starting, which is the skill that actually needs developing. So convincing yourself that you can do certain tasks just for 5 minutes, 2 minutes is another strategy you can try, because once you start, it will be more difficult for you to stop, and you will be more likely want to continue. Therefore, this 2 minute, 5 minutes rule can work if it's difficult for you to start doing tasks. The thoughts that maintain procrastination are remarkably consistent across people. Maybe you think, I will do it when I'm in the right frame of mind, I work better under pressure, I need to research a bit more first, and it will not be good anyway. And act diffusion doesn't argue with all these thoughts, or not tries to examine whether these thoughts are correct or not. It's just asking you, is this thought being useful for you? Is it useful for you to think this way? You change your relationship with the thought. For instance, you can say, I'm having the thought that I need to be in the right mood. And the thought becomes an event you are observing rather than an instruction you are following. And then the question that moves things is, given that the thought is present, and given what I genuinely value, what's the smallest useful action available right now? And taking the smallest step generally helps to increase your motivation. I want to return to this because it's the most counterintuitive and most important finding in the procrastination literature. According to Wall, Pitchell, and Bennett, students who forgave themselves were able to be more disciplined and to be more successful in the future. And the mechanism is that self-criticism activates threat increases anxiety increases avoidance. Therefore, the harsh response to procrastination directly produces more procrastination, which means that the inner critic you have been relying on to keep yourself in line has been quietly making the problem worse for you. So even if you think that procrastination is being useful for you, it's not the case. Therefore, before any productivity technique, name what you are avoiding. Is this a thought? Is this a feeling? Emotion identification. Before any productivity technique, try to name what you are avoiding. This doesn't mean I don't feel like, but specifically, is this an anxiety about an outcome? Is it an overwhelm about the scope? Is it boredom or self-doubt? You can try to write down. Lieberman's research shows that labeling itself reduces amygdala activation. Then try to match the response. Anxiety needs lower stakes, overwhelm needs a smaller nest action, boredom needs changed conditions, and self-doubt needs kindness. So this week you can try to make 3 changes that restore choice where design has removed it. Putting your phone in another room and decreasing distractions. You are not trying to make escape impossible, you are reintroducing the moment where you get to decide, which is exactly what design was built to eliminate. For the task you've been avoiding, commit to 5 minutes with genuine permission to stop. You can set a timer, define the smallest possible first action, opening the document, writing 1 sentence, reading 1 page, beginning. Most people continue well past the timer because initiation was the entire barrier, and once you start to do certain things, it's easier for you to continue. And if you stop at 5 minutes, that still counts. You practice starting, which is the skill that needs building. And you have asked some questions. You are saying I procrastinate most on the things I care about most, so why? Because caring raises the stakes, and raised stakes activate anxiety that drives avoidance. And the work you care about most is the work where failure would mean the most. So starting it risks the most painful possible outcome. And not starting keeps the possibility of excellence intact and unfalsified. This is extremely common among capable people, and it's genuinely painful because it means that things that matter most to you are the ones you keep failing to begin. So the way through is not more pressure. Pressure raises the stakes further. It's deliberately lowering the stakes of the first attempt, a terrible first draft. Private version nobody sees, 5 minutes with permission to stop. You are separating the act of starting from the judgment on the result. And somebody asked that they have tried everything and nothing sticks, and they are asking, is there something wrong with me? This doesn't mean that something wrong with you, but the systems were probably solving the wrong problem. And if procrastination is emotional regulation, then a calendar system, a task application, or a new planner addresses the symptoms with leaving the mechanism untouched. That's why they work briefly and then fail, which then gets interpreted as personal failure and adds another layer of self-criticism. That's why the things that actually work address the emotion, identifying it, reducing stakes, making initiation trivially small, and responding to lapses with something other than attack. And if the avoidance is severe, persistent, and significantly affecting your life, that's worth working through properly with support rather than trying 11th system. So first of all, difficulty starting is not laziness and it's not a character defect. It doesn't mean that there is something wrong with you. It's an emotional regulation pattern operating in an environment specifically engineered to make escape easier and more compelling than it has ever been in human history. Therefore, you are not failing a fair test. The second is that this is a genuine workable, not through more force. Therefore, through naming what you're actually avoiding, through redesigning environment so the choice point returns, and through making the start so small that motivation becomes irrelevant, and through responding to your own lapses with something other than contempt. Contempt has been part of the problem. If you have seen yourself while we've been discussing here having certain problems, I want you to remember that support is always here. You can reach out to me using social media or my website, whether it's one-to-one therapy, consultation, or simply a conversation about where to begin. You don't have to carry this alone. Reaching out is not a weakness. It's one of the most courageous and intelligent things a high achiever can do. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attention and for your thoughts, for your engagement, for your questions and time. See you in the next videos. Take good care of yourself.